Tonight, we've come to talk about how we should change. I'll tell you something very interesting. I saw something that the word nefesh, of course, nefesh means soul. And we want that our souls, our nefesh should become closer to Hashem. And this is the season for it. You know why? Because nefesh is spelled nun, pei, shin. And I saw in Svarim that's ner, which is candle, pei is psila, which is wick, and shemen, shin, is oil. So it's amazing that as we approach the yontif of Chanukah, we have something that we can improve our nefesh, that our neshama should come closer to Hashem. And usually when I speak about Chanukah, I end with this thought, but to me it's so exciting because we are in a shul where there are many, many great Sephardic people here. And so I want to tell you something that Rabbi Ovadia Yosef once said. And he said, you know what Mashiach stands for? You wouldn't believe. If you never heard this, you would not believe it. Write it down and tell it over in school and tell it over in your homes. Mashiach stands for Madlikin Shemaynas Yemei Chanukah. Isn't that amazing? Only he could think of that. And that's so great. So now we're talking about improving our nefesh, the ner, the psila, the shemen, and we're talking about Mashiach, bringing Mashiach. And that's Madlikin Shemaynas Yemei Chanukah. So it's very interesting that Yirmiyahu Hanavi, the prophet Yirmiyahu, in Perik Yud Aleph Pasuk Tes Zayin, he compares Klal Yisrael to an olive tree and to olives. And he says like this, Zayis Ranon, the fresh olive tree, Yefei Peri, it has such beautiful fruit, Yefei Pri Toyar Kora Hashem Shemech. Hashem has called Klal Yisrael the olive or the olive tree. And why is that? So the Medrash in Shemais tells us something very interesting. Why did Yirmiyahu Hanavi decide to call the Jewish people like olives? And for those of you taking notes, it's in Shemais Rabbah, Lamed Vav, Perik Lamed Vav, Ois Aleph. And it says like this, and I want you to try it tonight. When you go home, try it. And if your kids are not up tomorrow before they go to school, try it, and you'll see an amazing thing. Kol hamashkim misarvim zeh b'zeh. You take a cup and you mix many drinks. Let's say you'll take orange juice, and you'll take soda, and you'll take water. They're all going to mix all together. But if you add oil to it, you know what's going to happen after a few minutes? The oil's going to rise to the top. And that's why I want you to do it in front of your children. It's not baltashchis, because it shows them a great lesson. That we are Jews and we are mixed in the world. We're living in Golas, but we rise to the top. We have to learn how to make our nefesh rise to the top. That's what Yirmiyah was telling us. That Hashem called us a zayis, olive oil, because just like olive oil doesn't mix with the other oils, with the other liquids, I should say, but rather it rises to the top. That's exactly how a Yid should be as well. And then Dover Acher, it says another thing. Kol hamashkim adam arev bahem, all the drinks that we said before that you could mix, whether you mix soda and orange juice or grape juice or water, they all get mixed up and you don't know which is on top and which is on bottom. Aval hashemen, not only does the shemen separate, but it rises to the top. And that's exactly what we want to speak about tonight. What can we do, each and every one of us, in this month of Kislev, as we prepare for Chanukah? What can we do that we should rise our nefesh to the top? And you know something? David HaMelech in Tehillim, when he blesses Klal Yisrael, when he blesses every Jewish family, and this is the bracha that I want to give to everyone that's here tonight, and to everyone that's going to get married, mit Hashem, and build a family, and to anyone outside our Beis HaMedrash tonight that's going to hear this in Torah anytime, or wherever it is throughout the world. Banecha, your children, keshesilei zeisim, should be like olive plants. And the Radak says, you know why? because you can't mix an olive plant with another plant. It's not going to grow together. The olive remains separate. And not only that, olives are always fresh and vibrant. And that's what we want our children to always be, fresh and vibrant and excited about Yiddishkeit. There are many people, by the time they get to their 20s and 30s, they're so bored already, and they're not excited anymore. They're burdened down with certain things in life. That's not how a Yid is supposed to be. A Yid should never be burned out. A Yid should always be excited, just like the Zayas is always fresh, and it's always vibrant, and it's always in season. So I want to tell you something very interesting. All of you know that the first Gemara in Shas is Masechta Brachas. And right in the beginning of Masechta Brachas, there are many, many commentaries that give an introduction to the Gemara. They give an introduction to all of Shas. But the Meiri, what he did in his Sefer, which is a brilliant, brilliant Sefer on the Masechta, he gives an introduction to life. And he tells us an amazing thing. He says every single experience that you go through, if you go through a wedding, you go through a Shabbos, you go through a Yontif, you go through a happy occasion or chas v'shalom, a sad occasion, you have to change. You have to grow. Everything that happens to us, Hashem made it happen so that we should grow from it. Even the fact that we're all here tonight. When we leave here tonight, we're supposed to be different than when we walked in. And you know what he says? He says if a person doesn't change after a Chag, he doesn't change after Pesach, he doesn't change after Shavuos or Sukkot or Chanukah, then a person, chas v'shalom, is like a donkey. A donkey carries wheat in the wheat season, barley in the barley season, oats in the oat season, and it remains the same donkey. If Hashem gave you the opportunity to go through an experience, there's a reason for it, so that you should be able to grow. So now we're in the month of Kislev, and we're preparing for Chanukah, so we have to learn the lessons. What does Hashem want from us? What are we going to do here now in this year, Tovshin Ayin Ches in 2017? How are we going to change this Chanukah? How should we approach Chanukah and see how our nefesh could get higher so that we are zeicha to see Mashiach in our time? So I'll tell you something that I think, to me, we're going to learn a few lessons, but I love this lesson. You know, there's a machlokes, there's an argument in the Gemara between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says that on the first night of Chanukah, you're supposed to light 8 candles. On the second night, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. On the first night, we know that we still have 8 days left to the holiday, so we light 8 candles. Then there's 7 days left to the miracle, 6 days left, 5 days left. But that's not what we do. We do what Hillel said. And what I like is not only what Hillel said, but the reason that he gives. And the reason that he gives applies to every one of us. And he says like this. He says, the mitzvah of Chanukah, Yom Rishon Madlik Achas. On the first night, as we all do, we light 1. Mikan ve'elach. From the first night to the second, the third, Moisif v'hoilach. We always add and we go on. That's the lesson we have to learn tonight. A Yid always has to grow. Every night before you go to sleep, you have to ask yourself, how did I grow today? What did I do that was special, that I'm better today than I was yesterday? Because if chas v'shalom somebody doesn't grow, then they're going downhill. Nobody ever remains on the status quo. That's what the Vilna Gaon tells us. Every day you got to take a step higher. And I'll tell you something amazing. Many years ago, there was an Agudas Yisrael convention, and there was a wonderful person, a great person who I'm very, very friendly with. His name is Dayan Chanoich Ehrentrau. A genius of a person, a great British accent, a Dayan, a Talmud Chacham. And his spot to speak was Matzah Shabbos. Now, unfortunately, that year the program started very, very late. So he didn't get up to speak until way after midnight. Now, he's a smart person. You know, how long can you speak after midnight? People are tired. It's a long Shabbos, many speeches, you know, many meals. So he spoke only a very short time. But what he said in those 12 or 13 minutes was something so powerful that every single time without fail that we meet, and we've met in his house, we've met in his shul, we went away for a Shabbos together with his kehillah, we always talk about that thing that he said that night within 12 minutes. It was great. And I want you to remember it, and you could look it up in the Pasuk. It's in Bereshis Lamed, Pasuk Chafei, last week's Parsha. And what happened is like this. The Torah tells us, Vahi kashe yolda Rachel as Yosef. When Rachel gave birth to Yosef, Vayome Yaakov, Yaakov says to Lavan, Shalcheni, now you could send me, now I can face the world. So the Shemish Shmuel, who was a Hasidic Rebbe, his father was a Sochachover Rebbe, he asked a question. Just because Yaakov had Yosef, now he's ready to face the world? He had Yehuda. Yehuda, all the Jewish kings came from Yehuda. So why wasn't that good enough? He had Levi, all the Kohanim and the Leviim, they came from Levi. So why wasn't that good enough? All the Talmid Chachamim come from Yisachar or from Shimon. So why wasn't that good enough? And the Shem Shmuel says, it has to do with the name. You know what Yosef means? More. More. Never being satisfied with the status quo. And that's what Yaakov was saying to Lavan. Once I have a child who will never be satisfied with the status quo, he'll always want to grow higher and higher and higher. That's the kid I can take with me to Golis. That's the kid. That's the one that I could take with me, and I'm not afraid to face anyone because he's always going to grow. So tonight, we're getting ready for Chanukah, Moisef V'Hoilach, more and more. Yosef is the reason that we can face the Golis, we can face the world, because we're always trying to elevate our nefesh. Nefesh, ner, psila, shemen. That's what it's all about. How are we going to improve? What should we do more? So I'll tell you something very interesting. I believe that every aspect of life we can do a little more. There are many women here who say Tehillim every day. Now some say 1 perek, some say 5. Whatever you do, maybe just add 1 more. There are many men here who learn Chumash. They learn Chumash or Tanakh or Gemara. Whatever you learn in the month of Kislev, add another Mishnah. Add another pasuk. Do something a little bit more. You learn with your child, and I'm a big believer of fathers learning with their children and mothers also. You learn 5-10 minutes every night, learn 12. It doesn't have to be that you're changing, that from now, instead of 5, you're going to learn 35. No, it's too much. Small increments, go higher and higher. And you know something? You know what the Chavetz Chaim says? And this is what we should do. The Chavetz Chaim says every single day you should do a chesed for somebody else. How about tonight? Let's start a spiral notebook. And every night before you go to sleep, you write down a favor that you did for somebody else. Now, I'm not talking a husband for a wife for a husband. That you got to do if you know it's good for you. I'm talking out of the house. I'm talking out of the house. Then you'll see what a carpool is. Then you'll see what it means to make a telephone call to a lady who's in a nursing home. Then you'll see what it means to drive an old man to shul, or to call a single mother, whether she's a divorced woman or a widowed woman and she's home with a number of children, and you're in the supermarket and you call her up and say, listen, I'm here anyway. How can I help you? Many times we forget about the single women. Nobody should blame them. We don't know what the situation is. It's nobody's fault. It's not our business at all. But one thing is, we got to help them. Because it's not easy being a single parent. Single father, single mother, whatever. We got to invite them. We got to care for them. We have to sympathize with them. Never, never criticize, because you don't know what you would have done in that situation. But one thing is for sure. If you're in the supermarket and you could call somebody who's home and can't get out, that's a tremendous chesed. And the Chavetz Chaim says every single day you got to do a chesed. And every day you got to learn something. And I believe that's for women too. I'm not saying chas v'shalom that the woman should learn the daf. Of course not. But there's so many things that a woman could learn. Hilchas brachas, she could learn musar. Hilchas kashrus. There's so many things. Tilim, Tanakh, Chumash, there's so much. Every one of us, every single day, we should learn something. I just want to give you some examples. What does it mean when somebody wants to do a favor? I know a lady in Washington Heights, her name is Rita Slamowitz. She's an elderly lady, and she told me this story that you will literally be blown away by this story. It's just absolutely amazing. There was a woman in Washington Heights who was close to 90. Her husband died. So, of course, she was sitting Shiva. Now, unfortunately, this woman who was sitting Shiva, she never had any children with her husband. And her husband was the last one of his brothers and sisters to remain alive. So she was sitting alone. She had no children, no brothers and sisters. And her husband, all his siblings had passed away already. So a few elderly women, including Mrs. Slamowitz, went to pay a Shiva call, went to be Menachem Aval. And she told me, in the middle, while she's sitting there, a couple walks in from Borough Park. Nobody knew who they were. And the couple starts asking the widow some questions about her husband. They were very nice and very sensitive. After a few minutes, the lady said to this couple, I don't know you, but did you know my husband? So they said, no. So she said, I hope you don't mind my asking, but what are you doing here? You don't know me, I don't know you, and you didn't know my husband. Listen to what they said, you could faint. They said, we get the Hamodia every week. And in Hamodia, there's an article, there's a list by Misaskim. Misaskim has a list of all those people that are sitting Shiva. She said, me and my husband, we go through the list. If we see anybody, any place in New York that's sitting Shiva alone, we go to be Menachem Aval. You have to stand up for people like that. Could you imagine the chesed and the concern? They don't even know these people. But we're all brothers. We're all sisters. So we go and we do a favor. You know what that meant to that lady? That somebody cares, somebody who didn't even know her cares. That's a chesed, that's beautiful. I'll tell you a story that happened in our shul. I davened by Rabbi Teitelbaum, where the Rebbetzin davened for many years before she went out on her own, right, with her husband. Okay? So it's a wonderful place. And this year on Purim, if you remember, there was a snowstorm. Okay? And, everybody came to shul anyway, of course. And in our shul, like they have in many, many shuls, they have something that's called Beis Medrash of Mordechai HaTzadik. And what that means is that fathers or grandfathers come with their sons and grandsons, and they learn for a half hour or an hour before Mincha, which is, let's say, about 2 o'clock. And then afterwards, our Rav, Rabbi Shlomo Teitelbaum, he sits up front, and all the kids come with their costumes, and he gives everybody money. He gives all the kids money, Purim Geld. Fine. Now, we have a guy in our shul who comes from England. Only a guy from England could have a name like this, Nigel. Nigel Collins. Okay, he's a Kohen, a lovely, lovely guy. Now, Nigel Collins is a great photographer. Now, nobody asked him to do this thing that I'm about to tell you. But what Nigel did is absolutely incredible. He came to the Beis Medrash of Mordechai HaTzadik with his camera. And after Mincha, when the rabbi was giving money to all the kids in their costumes, he took 2 or 3 pictures of every kid. By the time everybody went home and was getting ready to wash for the Sudas Purim, everybody in the shul had an email with a picture of their son and the rabbi. Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. That is just unbelievable. That's Mika Amcha Yisrael. That's a person who didn't have to do what he did, but he did it because he's very, very special. And that's what Klal Yisrael is all about. So you do a chesed every day. Before you go to sleep, you look in the mirror, you're going to feel great about yourself. You can feel great because you did something more, because you weren't living only for yourself. As a matter of fact, there's an expression, a 3-word expression that we should all remember. There was a great tzaddik, his name was Rab Chaim Volozhiner. He was the first one to make a yeshiva. He was a Talmud of the Vilna Gaon. And he wrote a sefer called Nefesh HaChaim, very difficult sefer on philosophy, sefer on Jewish thought. But the introduction was written by his son, Rabbi Yitzchak, or Rabbi Itzela as he was called. And in there, Rabbi Yitzchak Volozhiner writes that my father always used to tell me, he would criticize me, how come you don't get involved in other people's problems? You got to help other people. And then he said, you know something? I want you to remember these 3 words. Loi la'atzmai nivra. You are not created for yourself. You are not created that you should become rich and famous. Every one of us here, and I know many of you, you have talents. There's a little girl here. I don't know where she's sitting, but she's here. She's a great artist. My sukkah every year is filled with all these beautiful things. Even tonight she brought me some. Oh, there she is, right? Sorry we can't get you on camera, well, whatever. But she always makes these gorgeous decorations that she brings to my house. Erev Sukkot tonight, she gave me something for Chanukah already. Very special. Every one of us has talents. But Hashem didn't give you a talent so that you should become rich and famous. Hashem gave you a talent so you should go out and help somebody. You're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a negotiator, you're a speaker, whatever talent you have. You go out and you help other people. That's really what it's all about. So the idea of doing more and helping and encouraging people, I want to tell you a great, great story about encouraging people. In the concentration camp in Bergen-Belsen, many years ago in the early 1940s, there was a man, his name was Rab Shraga Shmuel Schnitzler. Everybody called him Rab Shmelka. He was a tzaddik, a wonderful person. And it was right now at this time, Kislev, just a week before Chanukah, and he was telling everybody, don't worry, we're going to be able to light candles. We're going to be able to have a menorah, or somehow we're going to light licht here in the barracks. And everybody thought he was crazy. How could that be? It's impossible. And some people said he's just a nice man. He just wants to give everybody encouragement. And he would say, you'll see, you'll see. Now, Reb Shmelka, unfortunately, had a terrible, terrible job. And in the concentration camp, when they gave a person a job, he had no choice. He had to do that job, otherwise he'd be killed. And what his terrible job was that after people were gassed to death, they would pile all the bodies on a flatbed truck, and he would walk alongside the truck to make sure that the bodies didn't fall off. And he would walk on a track. I saw this track. I saw where it was, and he would take the bodies into the crematorium. And many times he would cry because he knew these people that were being put to be burned into ashes. It was terrible. It was just terrible. And one day, as he was walking, every day he walked the same path, back and forth, from where the people were gassed to death, and then along that track, in the grass, in the ground, and he would go to the crematorium. One day he almost slipped because there was like a little bump in the earth. Now that bump was not there the day before. And he couldn't understand, why is this bump here? How did this bump get here? And then he figured out, I'll bet somebody's hiding something in there. And he was very curious, and he decided that at night he would go out when no one was looking to see if there was something underneath that piece of earth that had like a lump, like a little bump. And sure enough, he went out, and you will not believe what he found. He found little strands of cotton, which made him think, oh my goodness, somebody's putting wicks here. And then he found little tiny cups, and then he found like a little jar of oil. Who in the world put that there? But you know something? To me, the greatest part of this story is that he covered it up and he left it there. You know why? Because he knew, obviously, if somebody hid it there, they're going to come back and get it. So even though he could have been the hero, he could say, you see, I told you we're going to have oil and lights, and here we are. But he didn't do that. But every day he watched as much as he could to see who was going to come back for that little bit of oil and the little jugs, the little glasses, and the wicks. Nobody came back for them. Now, it was an hour or two before Chanukah, and he realized nobody's coming back. So he ran out, he got the wicks, he got the oil, he got that little jug, and he brought it back to the barracks, and the people, they were crying. They could not believe it. They could not believe that he really had oil, and they were able to make the bracha. He made the 3 brachas, and the people were crying and trying to sing quietly, saying more. So nobody could believe that such a thing could happen. And every single night, they lit those wicks. That was obviously in December of 1944. In 45, they were liberated. And he went back to Hungary. He lived in a place called Bekesh Chaba, and he was known as the Chaba Rov. He was a very, very holy Jew, and eventually he moved to Eretz Yisrael, and people used to come to him for brachas, to get blessings, because they knew how holy he was. And then one day in the early 1950s, he was able to get out of Israel, and he traveled to America. And he went to Williamsburg to see the Satmar Rebbe, Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum. And the reason that he went to the Satmar Rebbe was not only because the Satmar Rebbe was a big tzaddik, but the Satmar Rebbe was also in Bergen-Belsen. And so they had some common stories that they shared. They hadn't seen each other there, but they knew that they were there. And they started talking about all the different things that went on in Bergen-Belsen. And then the Satmar Rebbe said this. He said, I always felt bad. So the Chabarov said to him, Rabbi Schnitzler said to him, why do you feel bad? He said, I bribed a guard, and he let me hide some oil and some wicks and little cups. And I was liberated Chof Aleph Kislev, 4 days before Kislev, and I always felt bad that nobody used those wicks. And Rabbi Shmelka said to him, Rebbe, you can't believe what I'm about to tell you. I found them, and we used them. And they were both laughing and crying at the same time. And the Satmar Rebbe said, look how once again in Kislev, Hashem made another miracle with oil in our time. And I was so moved by this story, I wrote it up, and I told it in a little DVD that's called Living Lessons. I have a son-in-law, Hananya Kramer, who has a company, Kol Ram Multimedia. If you go on Kol Ram Multimedia, or if you go online and just press Living Lessons, Paysach Krohn, Chanukah stories, you're going to see that story. It's done in animation. And one night, I get a call from a guy, a friend of mine, Chaim Schnitzler. And he's crying. I said, Chaim, what's wrong? He says, you don't realize. That man, Rav Shmelka, that was my grandfather. I had no idea. My father was sitting here in the hospital with my father. He had no idea that story was known. And now it'll be around forever, because it's written in a book and it's on a DVD. But that's what happens when you try to give chizuk. That's what happens when you care about Yidden. Hashem makes it that you're able to do such wonderful, special things. Now, there's another aspect of Chanukah that I think is so important. And that is, we know that when we say Haneros Halalu, after we've lit the candles, and we say it also in the Shemoneh Esrei, we use this expression, Kedei lahodos ulahalel l'shimcha hagadol, to praise and to say thank you. Lahodos means to say thank you, and lahalel means to praise. And I think that the idea of saying thank you and the idea of praising people, praising Hashem, praising your spouse, praising a husband, praising a wife, praising your kids, praising people who do things for you, that has become a lost art. Many people don't say thank you anymore. We take everything for granted. I'm a very, very, very big believer in saying thank you. Even somebody who davens for the Amud, even if he's getting paid. But he davened, you didn't have to daven for the Amud. The Balkorei, and what about the lady behind the counter in the bakery? Or every time I'm on a plane, I go up to the pilot. You can't always get to the pilot today. But hey, he took me up. I don't have to tell you what could happen, right? A bus driver, whatever. I'll tell you a great story that happened with me. I was traveling to Toronto. And I don't know if you've ever been in Air Canada terminal in LaGuardia Airport. It's like a semicircle. And you walk in through security, and then you go to your gate. Now, I don't know why my gate is always the last one, always. The furthest one from the terminal. I remember one night, my wife and I were coming home from Atlanta, and on my ticket, it says terminal, gate 1. My wife says, look at this. Tonight, we're gate 1. Of course, in Atlanta, gate 1 is at the end, right? It starts the other way. So if you're traveling with me, you're going to go for a long walk. But whatever. More secure, for sure. But anyway, so Hashem loves me. Thank you. So what happened was, I'm waiting now at the gate, and we're almost about to get on the plane, and all of a sudden, everybody's turning around because there's 2 security guards that are coming, and they look very serious. Now, when 2 security guards are rushing to get to your terminal, something is wrong. And everybody is frightened. Is there a terrorist on board? Did they find out that somebody, has got a bomb? Or what's going on here? Anyhow, everybody's waiting to see who they're coming over to. And they come over to me. Not so pleasant. Everybody's watching, right? Meet a terrorist, right? And I say, gentlemen, can I help you? And the guy takes out a phone, and he says, is this yours? I said, officer, I was carrying my phone in my right pocket. Oui, veuillez. I start checking my pocket, right pocket, my shirt, my jacket, my pants. I don't have my phone. I take a look, that's my phone. I said, sir, how did you get my phone? He said, I don't know where you're traveling to, but you had so much stuff. You had 3 bins of stuff, you only picked up 2, and then the third one was your cell phone. I said, officer, I can't thank you enough. I got 500 numbers programmed in that phone. If I would have lost it, I'd have to sit and reprogram 500 numbers. And I thanked him profusely. And then I don't know what possessed me to ask him this question. I said, how'd you recognize me? There's 2,000 people on this terminal. I thought for sure he was going to say, you're the only guy wearing a black hat. That's what I thought he would say. That's not what he said. He said, do you remember what you said to us when you passed through security? I said, no, what'd I say? He said, you looked at both of us and you said, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I feel safer that you're here. He said, thousands of people walk by. Nobody says thank you. You said thank you. We were going to find you if you were the last guy in the terminal. Now, besides that, it's the Kiddush Hashem. Don't they deserve thanks? Would you like to have their job? You like to smell 5,000 pairs of socks a day? Right? What kind of job is that? Right? Somebody's got to do it. Okay, fine. You're not going to believe this. About a year later, after the story happens, a guy comes over to me. He says, Rabbi Krohn, you will not believe what happened. Because, I tell the story every place. He says, I was in Kennedy Airport, and I was in Air Canada. And I remembered your story. So as I'm going through security, I stopped, and I said to the security guard in Kennedy Airport, Air Canada, thank you, sir, for being here. The guy says to me, oh, you heard the rabbi tell the story? So let me tell you, you're allowed to thank them even if they're not from Air Canada, Southwest, American, United, whatever. But the point is, when you say thank you, you validate someone. And when your wife makes supper, you say thank you. And when your husband brings home a paycheck, you say thank you. Don't say uh-oh, say thank you. She's shocked, right? You have to say thank you. You have to say thank you. You don't take anything for granted. And you know something? There's a pasuk I always used to see Rabbi Shalom Shradron say, and I try to say it many times. And that pasuk is, Hoidu Lashem ki tov ki li'olam chasdai. You should practice that. You come home and you see your kids. Baruch Hashem, they're healthy. And they're playing with each other. Hoidu Lashem ki tov ki li'olam chasdai. You come home, you got a job. You have a spouse that you love. You're allowed to say that pasuk 10 times a day. And get used to saying it. You know why? Because then you become close to Hashem. Because then you realize that Chanukah is a time lahoidei salahalel. And for every little thing that we have to thank Hashem. Tonight, where's Iran? I can't see him because the light is blaring. But Iran, who's filming tonight, he's one of the guys filming tonight. He was in my house about 2.5 hours ago. And we made another video for a totally different organization on a totally different topic. There's a new thing. You should try to get it into your schools. Every Rosh Chodesh, there's a new organization in Eretz Yisrael. It's called V'Hashay Voisa. V'Hashay Voisa Elav Avecha. They're trying to teach children about emunah, trust in Hashem. That's what they did the first Rosh Chodesh. My speech tonight, that's going to be in the schools in Rosh Chodesh Teves, was about the goodness of Hashem. All the good things that Hashem does. And many times we don't even thank Hashem for everything that He does. I'll give you just a small example. And maybe we could do something special from now on when we bench. We all know apples are red, bananas are yellow, and pears are green, and grapes are purple. Do you ever see anybody paint an apple? Or paint a banana? Or paint a pear? Who painted that? Who made that? Hashem did that. You ever go to one of these beautiful stores like Aaron's or Seasons, and you see the display of fruit? It's gorgeous. Hashem could have made every fruit should be brown or white or pale or gray. That's not what Hashem did. Hashem did something very special. He made food pretty. Now, if you closed your eyes and I gave you different bits of food, you would be able to taste the difference. You'd know the difference between ice cream and sushi and pizza and steak and chocolate mousse and watermelon and cake. The taste of food. Hashem didn't have to make that food taste. Who makes the taste? Only Hashem, right? And besides, we're all here tonight, every single one of us, and anybody who's watching all over the world. That's only because the food has nutritional value. So food, you ever think about it? It has three things. An appearance, color, taste, and nutritional value. Now watch this. From tonight on, or tomorrow, when you bench, let's keep those three things in mind. B'chein, b'chesed, u'v'rachamim. What's chein? Grace. Beautiful food. Hashem didn't make it all just bland gray or brown or white. What's the chesed? The taste. It's so delicious. We all love certain foods. I told all the people, all the kids that are watching, I can't stand barbecue chips. Okay, my kids love barbecue. All these, whatever, all these sharp foods, whatever. It's not my taste. I don't know where they got it from. But whatever. Kids love that, right? That's something to be great. And rachamim. We're only here because we ate food today, because we could exist. So maybe let's make a new Kabbalah from tonight on. Not only are we going to do a chesed every day, not only are we going to learn something every day, but hakaras hatoiv, we're going to say benching carefully. And when we get home tonight in our siddur, we'll underline these three words: b'chein, b'chesed, u'v'rachamim. B'chein is with graciousness, with chesed is kindness, u'v'rachamim with compassion. And we'll think of those three things of food: the color, the taste, and the nutritional value. Oh, imagine that your child comes over to you and says, "Mom or Dad, thank you so much for the jacket that you got me, for the suit that you got me, the shoes. Everybody loved it." Well, you love that kid. You want to give them another pair of shoes, right? We're all Hashem's kids. When we say to Hashem, thank you for the taste of food, for the appearance of it, for the nutritional value, what do you think Hashem's going to do? He's going to give you a better job tomorrow. You'll get a raise. You wouldn't even know where it came from. You know where it came from? From saying thank you. Because Hashem is a father. And when a child says thank you to a parent, the parent wants to do greater things. I'll tell you another thing. What we could all do from tonight on, every single one of us without fail. Some people will do it 5 times a day. Some people will do it 10 times a day. And that's saying Asher Yotzar. Think about it. I got to tell you this. You won't believe this. Rabbi Tatz, a genius, Rabbi Akiva Tatz, he said something like this. How do you say the word skin in Hebrew? Does anybody know? Or, right. How do you spell it? Ayin, Vav, Resh. Is there another word that you could make with those letters? Ayin, Vav, Resh? Right, blind. Iver, blind. So now, why did Hashem make it that the same letters that mean skin means blind? You know why? Rabbi Tatz had a genius thing, because the skin blinds us to what's going on in the body. Imagine if we didn't have skin and I could see your heart and your lungs and your colon and your kidneys, and your blood and your veins, we would go crazy. But we don't see it. And because we don't see it, we take it for granted. But Baruch Hashem, I don't see anybody here in a wheelchair. I don't see anybody here in a respirator. Everybody's breathing, everybody walked, everybody talked, everybody ate. Everybody's sitting comfortably. That's wonderful. That means that the whole body is working. When do we ever get a chance to say thank you to Hashem? You know what we should do tonight? Not only do a chesed every day, not only learn something every day, and not only bench, b'chein b'chesed v'rachamim, let's try from now on. And I've been doing this for the last few months. I would never, ever, ever ask anybody to do something that I don't do. Stand in one place when you say Asher Yotzar. Just stand in one place. How long does it take? 9 seconds? Somebody told me they have a sign over their bathroom. Asher Yotzar is not Tfilas Haderech. Because, many people, when they're saying Asher Yotzar, they're walking out to the car, they're getting dressed, they're doing 10 different things. Stop and thank Hashem for your body. Thank Hashem that everything is... I'm going to tell you something now that if you never thought about this, you could go crazy from it. Do you know what the Vilna Gaon says in his Sefer? Well, he didn't write the Sefer on the Siddur, but he said these things and they wrote it and they called it the Siddur HaGra. The only bracha that we mentioned, the Kisei Kavodecha, the highest, the chair in heaven, only by Asher Yotzar. Golav Yudul Lefnei Kisei Kavodecha. Why do we say about Kisei Kavodecha? We don't say it by Shofar, we don't say it by Megillah, we don't say it by Matzah. We say it when you go to the bathroom. It's almost embarrassing to even talk about this topic. But you know what he says? I'll tell you what he says. Something so amazing. And he says like this, that we have to know that even from that high place, afilu misham, even from that high place in the Kisei HaKavod, mashgiach al dvarim shvelim ke'ela, Hashem takes care of us on these mundane things. So if we want to try to live and see Mashiach, Madlikin Shemayris Yemei Chanukah, we have to learn the lesson of Chanukah. The lesson of Chanukah is Lahoides Lahalel. Say thank you to Hashem. Thank you for your house, for your spouse, for your job. Of course, none of us have everything. And many times we focus on what we don't have. But we have a lot of good stuff. We're living in a great country. All the people who came from Russia, they'll tell you how great America is. They'll tell you that they can take their children and bring them to schools, Yiddish schools. That's what Chazaq is all about. That's why we have to help them to make sure that every child goes to a Yiddish school. But you couldn't do that in other countries, and we're doing it here. We have to thank Hashem. You don't take anything ever for granted. I just want to tell you one more thing, and then we'll review and end with a great story. One of the great Talmidei Chachamim who wrote on the Shas was in Morocco. His name was Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi. He came from Fez, Alfasi. Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, the Rif. And every Gemara, every single Gemara in the back, you open it up, you have the Rif. It's one of the commentaries. Now, it's very interesting. I remember when I went to Morocco, we were going from Morocco, we were going to Spain, and we went to Spain and then to Gibraltar. And that was the exact same trip that the Rif took, because the Rif was a great tzaddik and a dayan, a judge, and he once ruled against a very wealthy person, and that wealthy person threatened to kill him. And the Rif had to run away. And he was on that boat from Morocco in Tangiers to go towards Spain. And while we were on that boat, I told the people this story. And this story is brought in one of the commentaries. It's called the Shita Mukabetzes, in Bava Kama Tzadik Beis, on Beis 92b. And it tells us an amazing story. There was one time when the Rif was not feeling well, and he needed warm baths. And he had a neighbor who was a wealthy man, and he had like a jacuzzi type of bath. So he said to the great rabbi, "Come, Rabbi, move into my house. You'll be able to take these warm baths, and you'll be healed. You'll see, they're very, very soothing." And the Rif moved into this fellow's house. He was there for a little while, and he took the baths whenever he was supposed to, and he got healed. A few years later, unfortunately, this wealthy man lost a lot of money. And now he had to move. But he had to sell some of the things that he had. So listen to this. He goes over to the Rif, his neighbor, the rabbi, and he says, Rabbi, listen, I got to sell this jacuzzi. Could you do me a favor? I don't want to cheat anybody. Could you come and figure out how much it's worth? So I'm going to sell it for a decent price. I don't want to cheat anybody and, make so much money off someone if I'm not supposed to. You know what the Rif said? You would not believe. The Rif said, Loi adain v'loi oire b'merchatz hazeh. I cannot rule on this bath. I cannot judge it. You know why? Because I gained from it. I gained from it. And if I underestimate its value, that's a lack of saying thanks to that bath. Who says thanks to a bath? But you know what the Rif is teaching us and the Gemara is teaching us? Even something that's an inanimate object, something that has no feelings, you have to be grateful to it. Why do we kiss a sitter? You know why? Because you davened from it. It's holy. A person should never throw clothes on the floor. Because clothes, we all choose our clothes because we feel that defines us. And the Gemara has an expression, bira deshasis minei, a well that you drank from, like tishta b'kola, don't throw a rock in it. Just because you drank from the well, what, the well has feelings? No, it teaches us something. Even inanimate objects. That's why we know Moshe couldn't hit the ground, remember? He couldn't hit the ground by the Makkah of Kinim because the ground really protected him when it accepted that Mitzri that Moshe killed. And he couldn't hit the water because the water saved him when he was a little boy. So even for inanimate objects, your car shouldn't look like a slobby mess. You know why it's not nice? Because it's not respect to the car itself. How do you like that? Now, I'm going to tell you a story. I know you're not going to believe one word of this, and I don't want anybody to do it, because if they do it, we'll call Hatzal on you, but I'm still going to tell you the story. But you have to be on a very, very high madrega. In Muncie, there was a great tzaddik. His name was Rabbi Mordechai Schwab, Rabbi Shimon Schwab's brother. His son told me the story. He told it to me 3 times because I didn't believe it the first 2. He said that after he finished wearing a suit, let's say wore it a couple months or a year and a half, or whatever, he just didn't throw it out. He took it off, he folded it, he put it in a plastic container, and he spoke to the suit. I don't want you to speak to suits. If you speak to the suits, we're going to call Hatzalah. But he spoke to the suit and listened to what he said in Yiddish. Du hast mir gut bedient. You served me well. Imagine that. And he put it in a drawer. He kept it there for a few months. And then again, he took it out. And then he put it in another package, whatever. And then he put it out. Now, you got to be on a madrega to talk to your suit. But the point is, a person realizes that everything that Hashem gives us, that's why Yaakov went back for those small jugs. And some say that was the jug of oil that they used in the Beis HaMikdash. So of course he went back for it, because he probably knew that it was so holy. Everything that you have, your snood, your jacket, your scarf, your car, everything you have to be grateful for. Everything you have to treat with dignity. So let's review everything that we said, and we'll end with a great thought. Let's remember, Yirmiyah compared Klal Yisrael to an olive. Why? We said a few reasons. Because the olive oil never mixes. Tonight, try it with a few different liquids. Show it to your kids. Don't forget before you go to sleep. Take soda, orange juice, and olive oil, and see. The olive oil will raise to the top. And if you get in trouble, call me. I'll take care of you. Okay? Always be vibrant. The children should be vibrant, just like olives. Let's remember that's when Yosef was born. Yaakov was not afraid anymore, because he said Yosef means more, and if I have a child who always wants more, I'll be okay in Golos. What do we do more like the Chavetz Chaim says? Do a chesed every day. Let's be like that couple that was so sensitive to that woman who was sitting Shiva alone. Let's be like Nigel, who took his camera and took pictures though nobody asked him. Each in our own way. We got our own talents. Take your talents and use your talents. Let's remember what Rabbi Yitzchak Volozhin has said, that his father told him, Lo la'atzmai nivra, you were not created only for yourself. Let's remember to be moisef v'hoilech, to add constantly. Let's remember that great story of Rabbi Shmelka and Bergen-Belsen, how he wanted to encourage the Jews, and Hashem helped him through the Satmar Rebbe, that he was able to get that oil, and he was able to make that miracle in Bergen-Belsen. Let's remember to say thank you to Hashem. What do we do every morning? What are the first words that we say when we wake up? Moida, we say thank you. Say thank you to your wife. Don't be embarrassed. Say thank you to your husband. Don't be embarrassed. Of course a wife has to make supper, and of course a husband has to bring in money. But they work hard. It doesn't happen by itself. Don't take it for granted. That everybody has a job, and that everybody's got a house, and that everybody's got a family. And if you have that, thank Hashem. That's what Moedim is all about. Saying thank you. Saying thank you not only to people, but to inanimate objects in your mind, obviously. You're not talking to the suits yet. Let's remember, we can say thank you to Hashem for our bodies by Asher Yotzar. Maybe we should stand in one place from now on. And when I said this over, a lady said to me, don't we say in Asher Yotzar, Ef shalamoid lefanecha, lamoid was standing. So let's stand in one place, and let's remember what the Goin tells us. Kisei kavaydecha, that's the only one that we say, that bracha, and we use Kisei kavaydecha. Let's remember to thank anyone who does a favor for us, no matter what. Whether it's the taxi driver, the pilot, the lady behind the counter, whatever it is. Let's remember the Rif was afraid to evaluate that jacuzzi, that warm bath, because he thought if he underestimates it, that's a lack of Akaras HaToiv. And finally, let's remember that which the Gemara tells us, Bira deshasis minei, a well that you drank from, leitishta bekola, don't throw a rock in it. So I want to tell you now a great story. The first part of the story is very painful to me because this was a great woman that I had the schus to meet in Manchester many, many, many years ago. It's got to be at least 25 years ago. Her name was Rebbe Chavi Wakshal. She just passed away now. But she had MS, and she went through a very, very difficult life. And I remember the first time I was in Manchester. I was about to go in to speak. I was going to go to an auditorium and speak. There was a whole group of women that had gotten together. It was hundreds of women. And somebody said to me, you got to go in to see this Rebbetzin, who unfortunately has MS. She's a brilliant woman. She gives shiurim. And she asked that you should come to see her. How could I come to see her? I'm on my way. Everybody's waiting. But how could you say no to a lady that's in a wheelchair and she's got MS? So I come in. There's 25 women sitting around her dining room table because she's going to give them a shiur. She wasn't in the room yet. And then they opened up the curtain and they wheeled her in. And when they wheeled her in, my heart fell because she was a young woman in her early 40s. She looked so vibrant, but she was paralyzed already. She could just move her hands, but she couldn't move the rest of her body. And she started telling me that she's writing a book about her difficulties. And she said to me, please write me a letter for the book. Now, I'd never written a letter for anybody's book. And I said, look, you have such big tzaddikim here in Manchester, Rav Segel, and I understand Rav Brevda comes to visit you. Let these tzaddikim write. I can't write a letter. I'm not on that level. She said, please, I listened to your CDs, your cassettes, it was in those days, and I read your books. Please write me a letter. How are you going to say no, especially 25 women are sitting there? So I figured this is how I'm going to say no. I said, listen, I haven't read the book yet, and I'm just about to go into speaking tomorrow. I'm flying to London. When I get back to New York, send me the book, send me the manuscript. If I like it, I promise you I'll write you a letter. I figured from 6,000 miles away, I'll be able to tell her no on the telephone. But of course, she was smarter than me. She had already printed out the manuscript. She said, here it is right here. Okay, so I said, okay, good, I'll read it. Now, when I got on the plane from London to go to New York and I started reading it, I'm telling you, I was crying. It broke my heart. All the travails that she was going through. I think the saddest page in that book is her daughter's 8th grade graduation. And she writes how an 8th grader, of course, looks beautiful, and all the women look so nice. They're all so proud of their kids. And she had to come in Nebuch with a wheelchair, and her daughter's embarrassed for her, and she's embarrassed for the daughter. It was just awful that she had to be wheeled into that graduation together with all the other girls and the mothers. But then there was one sentence that was in that book that literally just made me stop. Now, wherever I go, let's see if it's true. Yeah, of course it's true. I always carry this, except on Shabbos. I always carry a highlighter. I always underline great expressions. Even if I'm going to throw out the paper in 10 minutes, I always underline great expressions. I want it, there's a writer there, she can tell you that when you read a good expression and you underline it, it makes an impression, it stays in your brain somehow. She wrote like this. Now, she wrote this expression. It wasn't her expression, but listen to this. It's a life-changing expression because it teaches us a lesson. And the expression was like this. Any fool can count the seeds in one apple, but only Hashem, the highest power, can count the apples in one seed. Think of that. Any fool can count the seeds in one apple. You go home, you open up an apple, you count 4 or 5 seeds. But only Hashem, the highest power, can count the apples in one seed. You plant the seed, you have no idea how much can grow from it. And that's the final lesson for tonight. You plant the seed of friendship by doing chesed. You plant the seed of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by learning something extra, and Hashem gives you the blessing that you can learn 10 times more. You plant the seed by showing Hakaras HaTov to Hashem, and Hashem says, my child, you're saying thank you, you appreciate me, I'm going to show you. I'm going to appreciate you. From one little seed of a mitzvah, from one little seed of chesed, just like that, one little pach of shemen, a whole miracle developed, 8 days of miracles that we're still celebrating to this day today. It was only a little oil, but that was like a seed for the future. And that's what we have to plant tonight. We plant seeds of chesed, we plant seeds of Torah, so that we should be zeicha, that our nefesh, the ner, the psila, the shemen should be elevated. So we should see Mashiach, Madlika Shemayne Simei Chanukah. Let us hope that it should be a schus for the nifter, and all of us should be able to be elevated and see Mashiach in our time. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.